Okay, so we started the recording, and as you all know, we'll be sending these recordings to the IRGS website. They'll probably be posted either this evening or tomorrow early. So, what is our topic for today? Does anybody remember?
Civil registration.
Civil registration records. Great. Okay, I am going to share my screen, and we will get started here. Okay, so with the civil registrations, we're going to talk about a couple different websites that are very helpful as we go through this. And the first one, as we've started on with all of our conversations in the last year, we're going to start with the Family History Guide. And if you haven't been to the Family History Guide, this is a great source for learning how to do research. As it says, it's a free learning, research, training, and activity center for family history. And of course, I am the education director for the Family History Guide, so I'll have to promote what we do. Again, we're talking in countries, so we're going to go over to the countries section, and we're going to go to Central Europe and click on that, and then go to Germany for the information. And what we've talked about previously, we talked about research in Germany. We've talked about the archives and libraries. And our last conversation was on church and cemetery records. And this conversation will be on the civil records. So we'll click on the civil records, and we're on goal number 4, civil registration records. Now, of course, as you go down through the civil registration records, you end up with Family Search, Ancestry, MyHeritage, the Family Search Wiki, genealogy links. And each of these, if we click on them, will go directly to the collections that are pertaining to this topic. So here, we're going to go right into the German records, and you'll see the training that's available. There's a lot of different training classes that are available from Family Search. You see the link to the wiki, which we'll talk about in a little bit. You see the ongoing indexing projects that are going on. And you can see, like this one here, the Prussian censuses, the Saxony censuses from 1770 to 1934 are currently being worked on. They're 94% indexed. So if you have relatives there, soon you're going to be able to search the indexes for the census records very easily. You see the church books, 70% done, and some other church book card indexes, 86% done. And there's more projects down here. And also we have the records. You can do your surname searches. There are currently 41 sets of records that are searchable by just putting in surnames and searching them. And you can see some of them have a lot of records available, 11 million here, 27 million there. And some don't have very many at all. This one only has 1. So you can see that those are the ones that you can search physically currently. And then we have all of these other ones going down, which are not surname searchable. And then things that are in the catalog. So the books and other records that are available for German research. Okay, so there are a lot of records available, on Family Search to look at, but most of them you will have to go through and look at them with the page by page sort of search. Same thing with Ancestry. If we go to the Ancestry link here, these are all of the records that you're going to see German records in. And of course, it's telling me that there is a new format to the Ancestry webpage. So if you've been on the Facebook posts and other posts lately, you'll see all the people talking about what they like and don't like about the new layout for Ancestry. And then we have MyHeritage. And if you're familiar with MyHeritage, they have an extensive collection of German records. And you can see the various different records that are available on MyHeritage. So a lot of new records. Some of these are free, so you don't have to pay for the subscriptions in order to get those. So let's go back to our civil registration records and talk about a little bit about what those are. So if you were looking at civil registration records in the United States, what sort of things would you expect to find? Anybody who has an answer?
Weddings, births.
Yeah, so
Marriages,
weddings,
deaths.
births, deaths would be your general civil registration records. And you know that in the United States, each state had a different time frame for when they started those types of records. So, you know, you may go to one state and they may have started them in the 1870s. You go to the adjacent state and they may not have started until the 1890s. So you'll need to know, in the United States, you need to know what time frame those records were compiled for each state, and you'll need to know the same thing for the German records. Of course, the family search, the family history guide has its usual layout. They talk about learning how to use the German civil records, civil registration records, and there are some links here and some videos that you can use to look at these. What does a German civil registration record look like in Ancestry? Well, you can click on that link there, and it talks about the registrations in Ancestry. We have the vital and census records. So we have descriptions here about German vital records, but we also have several videos down here about German census records. And up until recently, most people did not even realize that there were German census records. Dr. Roger Meinert went out to Germany and spent an extensive period of time going through their archives and helping the archives actually locate where the census records were for many of these states. In the past, what was thought was that the German census records were taken, they were compiled, and the statistics were then collected, and the statistics were published, and the German census records were then discarded. Well, he was able to find that most states still have census records are available. And you'll want to watch this video here because this is a very good video. It's on the BYU library, BYU video library. And so you can see his discussion about the census records that are available. And also the one above it is the family search records collection. And I think Dr. Meinert does that presentation also. So if you want to learn about census records, these are about an hour long, but they are very good records. And he's given this presentation at Roots Tech before, and it's a very good presentation. And then there's an article here about German census records that are online, and we'll click on that. And you can see in this one here, there's a discussion about the German census records. But again, most of what this discussion is going to go back to is what Dr. Meinert has just presented in those documents previously, or in those videos. And then we get into specifics. So Schleswig-Holstein census, everybody knew that one existed. So that's not new, but these discussions here talk about the census, how border changes have affected where the census was taken, and the availability and indexed information about those censuses. And then down below, we have another video on locating specific people. So these are a little bit shorter. They're only on that Schleswig-Holstein census records. But if you have relatives that are there, these are very good records or very good videos to watch for that. And then down below, we have the quick links. So you can see these quick links go to German births and baptisms, marriages, and deaths and burials. And these are all on Family Search. So if I click on one of these, I'll go right to the search indexes for these records. And Family Search has also changed the way they do their searches. So you can go in here, you can type in the names, the places, the years that you're searching for, and you have more options. And the more options allow you to add things like parents. So if you know the father's name or the mother's name, you can then put those in and search for all of the children that might be recorded in those records. So this is something that I usually like to do, is put in the father and the mother's name and just put the last name in for the children. And now you'll see, they may have 8 or 10 children that are recorded in that set of records. So that's how the family history guide instruction is for the civil registrations. You know, again, you're going to get these instructional information. So, you know, the Family Search Wiki information here, which we're going to go to next. You're going to see other records in Ancestry and MyHeritage and other present or other groups like PriceGen. We'll talk about the PriceGen document handout here in just a second also. So the next place I generally tell people to look at is the Family Search Wiki. And here you'll see this is the Family Search Wiki for Germany civil registrations. And you see a lot of information here. You know, the civil registration started during the Napoleonic period. So when Napoleon invaded parts of Germany, he started civil registrations in those locations. So we're looking at the time period of 1792 for Alsace-Lorraine, 1798 for the Rhineland and the Hessen area. And then a little bit later, 1806, 1807, 1811 for several other locations in Germany. And you see that most of those ended in 1815. So after the Napoleonic reign, many of these locations stopped their civil registrations. Part of the reason for that was that the churches already established registrations. So we talked last month about the church registrations. We talked about the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches keeping their records. And you're going to find the Catholic Church records in Matricula, and you're going to find the Protestant church records in Archeon. And those are very good collections. So the civil registrations, they just, you know, stopped doing those for a period of time. But then you see between the 1850s and the mid 1870s, many of these German states reinstituted the civil registration. So you're going to see the states institute the civil registrations. And then in 1874, when you start to recoalesce the German states under Prussia, Prussia starts to initiate the civil registrations again. And so by the 1870s, 1876 timeframe, most of the states are now recording civil registrations. So how do you find out where your civil registration is held for these individual states? The first thing you need to know is the town that your ancestor came from. And we've talked about Myers Gazetteer before and how you can find the information for your town. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to look for Dama. And this is a town where a lot of my ancestors are from. And they're from the Dama-Oldenburg, Dama-Vecta-Oldenburg region. There are other Dama locations within Germany, and you'll see other towns that look similar and you know, in the type of town. So you need to know the specific town you're looking for. So I'm going to go into Dama-Oldenburg. Now, of course, if you've ever used Myers Gazetteer, you get a lot of information in this text. It's written in German, so you have to understand what that means. But the Myers Gazetteer website breaks it down for you. And it talks about these different divisions. So you can see that Dama is described in volume 1, page 316. Okay, that's, you know, that's good, but most of us aren't looking at the book itself. So now we need to look at the regions and the locations that we're talking about. So you can see here down below, it says Dama is the Landgemeinde, the rural community. The level 1 shows that it's in the kingdom or state of Oldenburg. And then the Amtsbezirk is Vecta. And then the Amtsgericht for Dama is Vecta. And the Amtsgericht is where the lower district court is held. The Amtsbezirk is where the district office is. And then we have the Bezirkskommando, which is the military command. And then the Standesmat is Dama. So the Standesmat is where the civil registration office is located. So no matter what town you put in here, you're always going to find the Standesmat for the region. And that is where you're going to find your civil registrations. So if your town does not have have the civil registration records, it's going to be located in the Standesmont. And this is what you're going to research when you start looking for your civil registration records. Okay. Now, going back to the Family Search Wiki, you can see that that's what it's talking about here. It's talking about where you're going to find your civil registration records for any place within Germany. And when you're in Family Search, you're going to want to search the Standesmont. So you want to search Dama or the town that your civil registration records are in. And then it talks about what types of records you're going to find. So we have our Geburtsregisters, which are our birth registers. We have our marriage registers, which can be called Heiraten, the Ihan, or the Trauungen records. And again, pardon my German, it's not the greatest. And it talks about what type of information you're going to find in there. So your proclamations, your supplements, your contracts, your permission papers. And then in our death records, the Sterbest registers or the Toten registers. Again, the information that's there. Now, down here, it talks about how to find them in the Family Search catalog. So you're going to put in Germany, the state, town, and civil registration when you're doing your search. And that's going to come up with the types of records that you're going to look for. And then similarly in Ancestry, you have the Hessen records here that it links out to, and the vital records in the archives. And then we can look at the individual locations. So in my case, Oldenburg would be the location I'd be looking for because that's where Dama is located. And then it usually gives you the instructions on how to write for civil registrations. And so it'll lay out the format and the types of information you want to include when you're writing for records. So if the records are not online, you'll still want to locate them and send a letter to that archive or that civil registration district and see if they have the records that you're looking for. And of course, in some of those regions that were previously Prussia, they're now Poland. And so it gives you an explanation of how to find those records in Poland. So any questions on the Family History Guide information or the Family Search information before we move on to some of the other items that we'll talk about today? Okay, no comments, no questions. Great. So this is one of the links that was in the Family History Guide's links on the page we were just talking about. This is from ThoughtCo, and this is about records of birth, marriage, deaths in Germany. And so this is a blog, a lot of information about different topics in this blog. And you can see, though, there's a genealogy section here that you can go in and find other things, but vital records from around the world, basics, surnames, genealogy fund, and so on. But you can see here, local civil registrar's office, and it's talking about looking for the Standesmont and how to write the records. You know, the records are going to be written in German. This is a question I get a lot of times. You know, when I talk about German records, I can say, oh, the web page can be translated in English as you're looking at it using Google Translate. And somebody will say, well, why isn't that record translated in English? Well, it's because the record it's an image taken, you know, of a German record. It's not going to be translated into English. So you'll have to type that in and, you know, find it in like Google Translate or something like that so you can get the translations. They also talk about many of the cities have websites. So you can go www.cityname.de where you can find some of these records, but you have to make sure you write the city name in German and not the English version of the city name. So that's another good thing about the Myers Gazetteer is that it gives you the name of the city, you know, the way it should be spelled. Government archives. So in Germany, the civil records are held at the Civil Registration Office. After they're 100 years old, they're then transferred to the state's archives. But that's usually a duplicate copy that are sent to the state's archives. So the city record will still, the Civil Registration Office will still maintain the original copies, and the duplicates will be sent to the state's archives. So we've talked about the archives before and some of the records you can find in that. And then with the Family History Library, The Family History Library has microfilmed many of these records already, and they're in the process of putting those online. The digital images are available online. They're just not indexed for many of these cases. And if you find a digital record that's not viewable at home, you'll have to go to the Family History Center to view that. And then the parish records. The parish records are supplements to these civil records, because the Catholic Church will be in the Catholic archives. The Protestant Church will be in the Protestant archives. The civil registrations will be in the civil registration archives. So you won't, necessarily find all three of these in the same location at the same time. Another link that's in the Family History Guide is to the Price Genealogies blog. And this one here is the German Civil Registration blog here. So all of these that I'm linking to are on the Family History Guide's webpage. So you can find these all there. And again, it's talking about what types of records you're going to be looking for. So you're going to be looking for the Standesmans registers, the civil stands registers, or the Personenstands registers. And that's what the civil registers are called, depending on where you're located in Germany. So you'll want to try looking at for each of those different terms. This gives you a layout of the history that we just talked about in the Family Search Wiki. Alsace-Lorraine, Baden, Palatine, and Rhineland started in 1792, Hamburg 1799, and so on and so forth. So you can see where your state in Germany is as far as when they started these registrations. So, if your family came from Bavaria, you're not going to find civil registrations before 1876. But if your family came from Westphalia, you may start finding the registrations beginning in 1808. So you want to be aware of that when you're doing your research. Okay, as we mentioned in the church discussion last month, each church, whenever that church was established, they started compiling records. So you might find records back into the 1600s if you're looking for the church records. So you'll want to be aware of alternate sources for those records. How to access these records, visit the civil registration office. But many of them are in the archives. This archive address is incorrect. The www should be taken off of it. And we'll talk about Bas Rhine in just a little bit. But if you're looking for Alsace-Lorraine, you're going to be looking for Bas Rhine, Haut Rhine, or Moselle, which are departments in France. So when somebody says, "Oh, my family's from Germany, they're from Alsace-Lorraine," you're actually going to be looking in the civil registration records in France for those records. And then what's usually included. For the birth records, you have the birth date and time, the child's name and gender, the parent's name, usually the mother's maiden name, the father's occupation, the parent's age, their residence, and their religion. This is a lot of really good information. Knowing the parents' ages gives you an idea of when you should be looking for them in the civil registration or the church registration. Knowing their religion tells you if you're going to be looking in Archeon, or if you're going to be looking in Matricula, or you're going to be looking in Family Search or Ancestry for church records. Knowing the religion will help you with that. The marriage records, as it says, they're usually 2 pages long. So you may have a page for the groom and a page for the bride. And this is going to give them the name, their birth dates, their ages, birthplaces, residence, occupation, marital status, religion, marriage dates and places. Sometimes it'll tell you if they're widowed, if they've been previously married. So that's good information also. And you also get the parents' names. I really love this because you get the parents' residence or where they were living, where they may have been born. You get their ages and their occupations. And then in the death records, you get their name, maiden name for the females, occupation, status, the birth dates, birthplaces, again, the religion, the residence, their spouses' names, their parents' names, death dates. What I found in some of these is it tells you, he is the widower of, and it gives his wife's name, even though she may be deceased. As you can see in these, the majority of the documents are typed, and then they have fill in the blanks. So once you learn what's in these typed portions of the documents, Now you'll have a better idea of where to look for the specific information you're trying to find. Are you trying to find their last residence or their birth date or their occupation? Well, all you have to do is go to that line in these documents and you'll be able to figure out that information. So this is, the Price Genealogy website has a great amount of information. It's highly referred to in the Family History Guide's links. So, you want to take a look at this. Now we're going to go in and we're going to start looking at some records that are available. So first of all, if I'm in Family Search, how am I going to find the civil registration records? Well, you'll want to go into Search and Catalog. And this will give you the ones that are available online. Now I could type in the name of the location. Okay, I'm going to type in Dahme, Oldenburg, Germany, and I'm going to go search. Notice I get church records, civil registration records, immigration, genealogy, and so on. So I can go into the civil registration, Civil Stand Register, 1808 to 1812, and I can click on that. And notice here, I have a picture of a camera with a key on it. That means that it's a restricted video or images, and I have to go to the Family History Center to look at that. Now, the good thing about it though is I have a film number. So I can go back, I can copy this film number. I can add it to my catalog print list. Okay. Or I can print it and then I can carry that into the Family History Center and I can go right to that information and start doing my research. If I go back to the search results and just take a quick look at the church records, you can see the church records are 1650 to 1875. So a lot longer time frame than the civil registration records. And when I go to the Kirchen books, these are all searchable. So I can click in the magnifying glass and I can search for the name, but I can't view the image. I will get indexed information. And again, we have Heiraten, Taufen, Tote. So the different types of records here will tell me if it's birth, marriage, or death records. And I have the film numbers for each of those. Okay. Now, the other way of going back into the catalog, I can go back to the catalog itself and I can go keywords. And in here, if I went Germany civil registrations, I can just type that in and I can hit search. Now, what this is going to tell me is there's about 10,685 results that are searchable. And I'm going to go down to this one here for Bavaria. Notice it's 1803 to 1886. And if I click on that one, you'll see it says an index of Germany, Bavaria, Nuremberg civil registration is available online here. And if I click on that availability, all I'm going to get is an index and I can search the names here and see if somebody shows up. Okay, there's my information. I can click on it and I have to go to the Nuremberg DE website in order to view this image, but here I have the indexed image in Family Search. Okay, so if I go to that web page, I'll have to go over and do my whole search again. I have to figure out where it is in this page. Anytime you're in the EU or any or any European countries, you have to accept the cookies in order to look for them. But I could go to online research and then start searching in here for the records I'm looking for. Okay. You can see that this indicates that the image is outside of Family Search. Now, I can also go back to Family Search. I'm going to go back to my search results. And I'm going to click on this one for Hesse. And you see all of these different civil registrations records that are available. Lots and lots and lots. I'm going to go down a little further. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots. And then I can go here and search for the images. Notice it says they're not available on microfilm, but the digital images are available. So I can click on that. And now I'm going to get into the names, and I'm going to type in a name again and go search. And you see, notice the image here does not have that little sheet around it, so the image is viewable. I can click on the name. I have the indexed information, and now I can view the original document. I always minimize this image index over here, so I have more space to do it. It says this is courtesy of the Hessian State Archives. And now I've got my civil registration for Adolf Brorman. And again, you can figure out what these words are that are typed and then figure out the information. So you can see this is 20th October, 1948 at 5:30 in the morning. And you can see there's more information here. He was born 12 February 1897 in Duisburg. And you get the information that comes along with it, including other people's names and so on. So I'm going to minimize that. Whoops. And go back out to the search. So you're going to get a variety of different types of records. Notice I have any attached here for 10,685. If I go to what's only online and update it, it shrinks it down to about 8,451. So again, this is for Germany. Okay. If I want something a little bit more detailed, like just Frankfurt, I just type in Frankfurt civil registration, and you can see I get 37 results that are available online. These can be microfilms, these can be digital, these can be books, other records that you might be able to use. Okay. Any questions on searching in Family Search?
But it's worth trying.
Yeah. You can also go into the books and do the search here. Notice that the books go to the Allen County Public Library, Arizona Public Library, or State Library, Brigham Public Library, Dallas, Houston, BYU, Pennsylvania, Midwest, Onondaga, Ontario, St. Louis, University of Florida, and Columbus Metropolitan Library. So you could type in Dama civil registration. And so now I get different books that are available, and these might be the records, or they might be telling me how to do research within those document types. So that's another option for when you're doing your search in Family Search. Now, we've talked about church records before, and so I want to go to Matricula. And this is Matricula's website. And so again, I'm in Dama. I'll go back out to Matricula, and I can go into the let me go back to the Matricula online page to start with. I can go right here to the maps and type in Dama, Germany, and hit search. And it gives me all the Catholic churches in the area. And of course, I'm looking specifically for the town, but they may have been from Osterfeen or from Steinfeld or Holdorf, Neuenkirchen, Vorden, any of these areas around. But I'm going to zoom in and click directly onto the St. Victor's Church for Dama. And it gives me the history of the church. And as we talked about this last time, we have the Taufen, the baptism records. We have the Trauungen records, so the marriage records. We have the Beerdigungen records, the funeral records, and other types of records. And again, if I don't know what those say, I can just go in and tell it to translate this page. And now we see baptism, wedding, funeral. I don't know what Firmungen is, but we see historical entries, family registers, civil registers, and so on. I'm going to go back to the original, and we see down here family registers, Zivilstand registers. So these are our civil registrations. Notice we have 1808, 9, 10, 11, and 12, 13. Then we have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 9, 10, 11, 12, and it'll continue on to the next pages. Why do you think we have like here for 1908, here for 1908, here for, another 1908, 1909? Why do we have multiple sets of civil registers for the same years? Any ideas?
Different areas.
Different priest,
What was that?
a different priest, and
No. So this civil register here,
Order change.
no, this one says Geberten. If I go to the next one, same year, 1813, this one says Ehi. If I go to the next one for 1813, it says Sterbefalle. Okay, so I have the birth civil registers, I have the marriage civil registers, and I have the death civil registers. So when I go into a page, I'm just going to go to page 5 here, just as a random one. This is the civil registers for the birth for this town. And so I can go through and figure out what all the type text means, and then figure out what the added text means here. But this is going to be my birth record. If I go to page 5 on this record, this is going to be a marriage record. Now notice it's not that nice clean format. It's a lot of printed material. But you may have the groom on the one page and the bride on the next page. So you want to make sure you look at both pages to see if it's, they're all on one page or they're on each on a different page. Notice what you see here. You don't see any signatures down here, but over here you see the witnesses' signatures down here. Or you may find, you see this same name right here, Hagen, is the same name here as Hagen. But now you have, Johann Lammerst and Anna Elizabeth Flogel, something. So that might be your husband and wife, your bride and your groom for this record. So you'll have to be able to read through these. And then we look at the death ones, and I'll go to number 5 also. And you see the death ones. Again, these are nicely printed out, and then you just have to find the information within them. Make sure you read the side notes, because the side notes may have some additional information. This one here. Let's see if I have a date. If I can find the date. I'm looking through it quickly, so I might miss it. But you see over here, there's Gestjerben, 12th January 1893. Over on this one, you see Gestjerben, 19 January 13. I'm not sure what that number is, but there's more information over here that might be helpful for you when you're doing your research. And then, so you're going to find some of the churches will have the civil registration records in their record sets also. So you'll want to go back through and look, all the way through. There are more transcripts, there are some indexes and things like that in here also. So you want to look at, if I'm looking at the transcript of the baptism, I also want to look for the civil registration of the birth. And then I also want to look at the baptism record itself. So in that case, I want to look at all 3 of those records to see if there's any differences between the baptism record, the transcript of the baptism, and the civil registration record. So I can tie all those 3 together. Okay. So in the Catholic records, not all of the churches will have the civil registers, but you want to check to see if it does. Now we're going to go over to do some research in Alsace-Lorraine. And again, Alsace-Lorraine was part of Germany for a period of time, and then it became part of France. So this is the archives.bosrhein.fr website. And if I go down to the bottom, this is my favorite website in the French archives because I love this one and because I do some research in this one. So I'm used to what it looks like, but it has a great layout to it. You can see we have the first block here are the parish registers and civil status documents. Then we have our population census, and then we have our inventories and online libraries. Okay. So again, we're talking about the civil status documents. So we're going to go into this collection here. If we wanted to go to the census, we click on the other one. So here it says we need to look at the Adeloc application. This is our viewing page. So we're going to click on that in order to view the documents. And as I'm going to do this, I'm going to go in, as you start typing in the towns pop up. So you can see, all of these different towns. And I'm going to go to Strasbourg to do my research. So we're going to load it up here. And great. Okay. So the first thing we see here are the parish registers. So these are our church records. These are our birth, our baptism, marriage, funeral records for the church. And we have St. Laurent. If we continue on, we get another Catholic parish, civil hospital, military hospital. So we have different La Robertso, Saint Etienne, St. Louis, and so on and so forth. So you have to go through all of these. You see there's a lot of them in here. Okay. And then we have our decennial tables, which are our census records. And then we have our civil registration records. So I'm going to click on the civil registration records, and you see it bumped us out to this location here. And we have our years for our civil registration. So we're going to start in the 1790s. Notice these years in here. These start at 1793, and then they go to year 2, year 3. Why did they change from 1793 to year 2, year 3, year 4? Does anybody know? So these are the years of the Napoleonic reign. So he decided he didn't want to use the Gregorian or the calendar that everybody else was using. So he made his own calendar, and the years are marked year 1, the first year of the reign of Napoleon, and so on. Notice now we're in 1806. So year 14, now 1806. So we have the M's, which are the registers of marriage. We have the D's, which are the registers of deceased. We have the knots, which are the registers of naissance or births. So you'll want to find the right register that you're looking for. And then when you click on the register, it will open up. You'll have to accept the terms of the agreement when you do this, but then you can go in and start changing pages. And now you can see this is a death register from 1806. Now, what you'll notice is that the language in these records will change. It'll be in French, then it'll be in Latin, then it'll be in German, then it'll be back in Latin or French, because it all depended on who was in control of the region at the time as to what language was being used in the records. But these are the civil records for Alsace-Lorraine. So I'm going to stop sharing there and see if you guys have any questions about German civil registration records. Again, realize that they're not extensive in many locations. They may have started for a few years and then ended and then started up decades later. But after 1874, 1876, we start to see more consistent civil registers. And you'll see birth records have to be 110 years. I think marriage records have to be 50 years, and death records have to be at least 30 years in order to be able to see them. So, any questions?
I do. I'm I'm not that knowledgeable about this, but it, you know, it being all in German or French or whatever. So I'll use Google Translate.
Yes.
And then how do I decipher the rest of it?
Yeah. So on the web pages, you can set, Google Translate to translate your German web pages very, very quickly. It'll just be that little button in Chrome. You can set it up to do that. The documents themselves, you'll have to learn German script. And we talked about German script in some of the earlier presentations. There's a lot of web pages out there that give you examples. So you can print off these worksheets that have examples of German script. And the German script changes over time. So you have to know what time frame you're looking at in the record and then compare it to that time frame in the German script handout. And then you'll learn what this letter looks like and what that letter looks like. And then you'll be able to start putting them together and then be able to type those words into Google Translate and see if the words come up as something reasonable. Google Translate will provide examples. So it'll say, you wrote this, but did you really mean to write this? Because that word doesn't make sense. This word does. And then you can sort of compare what you put and say, oh yeah, that should have been a B. I thought it was a V, because B's and V's look very similar. Then the handwriting, that's tougher because the handwriting depends on who was writing it as to how well it was written. I joke about it because I'll go through a church record and it'll be beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I change the page and either the priest had a stroke and can't write anymore, or they got this 90-year-old priest who's sitting there doing this as he writes everything, and you're like, oh boy. So now I got to learn this new handwriting. But if you're looking in the same location, the same record keeper year after year after year is probably taking many of those records. And so you can get used to his handwriting.
Okay.
Now, you don't have to read everything that they write. You just have to recognize certain words. So like I was reading one and I was able to say, oh, that's Geberton. That means he was born. I know that word. And then all of a sudden I see some dates after it. That indicates to me that if it says Geberton and then says date, that's probably his birth date.
Okay.
If it's got a person's name in it. So you'll have to be able to figure out, like that one said Elizabeth. Well, that E was a really strange looking E. And I was originally thinking it was a different letter. But then when I look at the whole word, you can see there's a B and then an H and a T in there. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that means I can read enough of those letters to interpret that to be Elizabeth.
Okay.
Sophia is a hard one too, because some of the S's don't look like S's, but you'll find, Germans are always the same names. It's Sophia, it's Maria, it's Anna, it's, so you get used to finding specific combinations of letters and you can interpret those just by looking at them and not being able to read them.
Okay.
So that's what I suggest. Now, as you do this more and more, you start to learn more and more of those words and you'll be like, oh, that's what that word is. That's what this word is. Or you've got that template for those forms. You know what all those words are. And you can print out one of those yourself with all of the words in English and then just figure out what the text is that they wrote inside of it. And then you can, write that out and make sense of it that way.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I always have problems with the towns because, the towns, they're all of a sudden just stuck in the middle of anywhere. And you're like, oh, what does that word, what does that word mean? And then you look at the map and you look at when I showed you the Dama map and it had all those little towns around it. You're like, oh, that's that town. Okay, now I can figure that out.
Right. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. Any other questions? Everybody's going to jump right in with their civil registration records now, right?
Yeah.
Encouragement to do it.
Now at least you have some sources to go to figure out where I'm going to hunt for those records. I do highly recommend the census video that's there on the Family History Guide. Dr. Meinert's video there. He has a book. So if you don't, if you like the video, you can go online and find his book, and then you can go right to the pages, and it has examples and discussions of what you're going to find in the census records. more and more of those census records are going to be put online soon, because now that he's found them, they can start archiving them and start digitizing them and putting them, getting them ready to go online. Anything else? We always manage to take up about an hour, don't we?
I apologize for being late.
Oh, no problem. Once we get done with this, I will render the video and I will send it to Mike Go Down and he'll be able to post it online. And so you can view it all later. And see anything. you
I'll
might-
catch the part I missed.
Yes, yes. Anything you might have missed will be there. Okay. Well, if there's no more questions, I'm going to stop the recording.